Добрий день, друзі, вітаю вас.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Welcome to Ukraine Media Center. We are supported by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. And today, our guest is Vadym Denysenko, Director of the Ukrainian Institute for the Future and advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. Vadym will present an expert study about sanctions imposed on Russian Federation. So could you please tell us, Vadym, whether those sanctions will work and what sort of sanctions we need in order to weaken Putin's regime? Good afternoon, dear friends, dear colleagues. Basically, Ukrainian Institute of the Future, which I represent here, has run a wide-scale research on all sanctions imposed during the last month against Russian Federation by all countries and worldwide, and we have called our studies "Sanctions on Russian Federation: What could actually break Vladimir Putin's regime?" The matter is this: during the last month, a lot has been said about sanctions themselves, about their importance, and actually, we can emphasize that indeed those sanctions are very important and very significant, but at the same time I can jump ahead and say that our conclusion has been as follows. Those sanctions cannot break the bone of Putinist regime. Those sanctions will make the life of Russians worse. They will make it worse for Russian elites. They will create problems for certain people within those elites. But by and large, they will not make a significant impact on the configuration of government in the Russian Federation, and they're unlikely to force Vladimir Putin to stop his policies he has been pursuing over many years. I'll start with the simple thing that you all know. According to all research by various rating agencies and various research organizations, as a result of sanctions, the GDP of the Russian Federation this year will drop at least by 8%, maximum by 12%. Is it deadly threat for Putin's regime? Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, we can say that it will be painful, but at the same time, it will not affect globally and in a critical way on the Russian Federation. Not the global and critical impact. Now, key points of our research and what actually should be done in order to be able to really fight Putin's regime as the key evil for Europe, and I believe on the global scale in early 21st century. First slide, please. Stability of currency and public budget system in the Russian Federation is first of all based on income from energy resources. There are a lot of myths about the natural gas impact, but actually the impact of natural gas is much lower than that of oil in the Russian Federation. Crude oil and oil products account for about 40% of total exports of the Russian Federation in 2021. Natural gas accounts for 10 to 11%. That means that in the whole export structure, natural gas is 4 times lower than crude oil. We have to understand it because a lot is being said about natural gas, and we were critically dependent for many years, and over the whole history of Ukraine it was all around gas pipeline. But actually the key potential problem for Russia is about problems in oil industry. The share of oil and gas income in the federal budget of the Russian Federation is on average 36 to 40% year to year. In peak years it was up to 50 years, but generally now it's 36 to 40 years. So you have to understand that oil and gas income accounts for 36 to 40 income of the total federal budget of the Russian Federation. And within that structure, crude oil accounts for 5 times larger share income than natural gas. And about total rent payments in Russian Federation, 90% of it is crude oil and oil products. Next slide, please. Reserves of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, it's generally known information. I will not cover it a lot. They have accounted about for 640 billion. Part of them has been frozen. There are various estimates, but the maximum estimate is 340 billion is not frozen as yet. So you have to understand that, say, safety net, the Russian Federation has more than 300 billion. That's what Putin can use at the moment. Next slide, please. This is one of the key slides in this whole presentation, just for all of you to understand that currently, due to oil products and natural gas, first of all, the excess in the trading balance of the Russian Federation is 18 to 20 billion US dollars a year. Even with all those sanctions, even with all those things, now Russia gets 18 to 20, or to 220, 240 billion. Yes, we know that Russians have problems with oil and gas sales at the moment. We know that yesterday some agreement happened with India at $35 per barrel, which is not that profitable for Russians. But if situation stabilizes, then Russians will be able to get a proficit budget with a proficit of 18 to 20 billion. It's all about the fact that actually the exports of oil and gas products is not much limited, is not really restricted. Even according to our estimates, even the worst case for Russian Federation, the exports of natural gas in 2022 will drop by 25%. That's the worst, the most pessimistic scenario for Russian Federation, while the exports of crude oil will drop by 50%. But partially all these things will be compensated due to the sky-high price that is still maintains on the global scales. Next slide, please. To follow on what I already said about the price for crude oil and export capacity of the Russian Federation for energy assets, the budget of the Russian Federation is based on the following parameters. About $78 per barrel for crude oil. It's higher at the moment, but Russians still have problems with selling it. That's what I mentioned about India sales. To fund the budget expenses, there is a price of $44 per barrel, or everything above it comes to the national funds of the Russian Federation. Whatever is below it is problematic for the budget. The critical level for budget would be less than $25 per barrel, because the production cost of Russian crude oil is $25 per barrel. So yesterday's sale at $35 is about zero, about breaking even, since when you take into account the cost of transportation. So it's also important to mention that yesterday the Russians were not able to sell that crude oil. They cannot conserve their oil wells just on the technology side, on the technical side. So they have sold breaking even. India has made some money on that, but Russians have not dropped actually a lot on that, because you know that Indian contract has been discussed a lot in global media and Ukrainian media. But I'd like to repeat that if the price for oil is $44 per barrel, then it breaks even for Russian budget. Currently, the official price for the crude oil is 95, the official ruble rate. These are a bit outdated numbers, but currently it's about 80 something. But we have to understand what sort of economy Vladimir Putin has been creating. He has been developing the economy similar to, what sort of monetary system he develops? He develops something similar to Chinese yuan. In China, there are two exchange rates. In Russia, there are three exchange rates. One of it is that external rate, which is recorded by the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. The second exchange rate is the exchange rate for lay people. And the difference between those between that rate of, and the official one is up to 25%, and the third one is black market rate, and the difference there is a bit higher than 25 rate. Those of you who lived in the Soviet Union in the 1980s, we had a similar system. There was that ruble of Neshtorgbank, there was a general ruble which was only used within the country, and also there was a black market rate which was on its own, living on its own. So that sort of economy that Putin is developing now. Those oil and gas profits allow him to balance the system, and as long as he has oil and gas super profits, he can maintain the economy and stabilize the exchange rate of the ruble, as it was happening recently. Officially, it dropped basically to pre-war, pre-invasion level. Next slide, please. Basically, I think after all I said, I will not disclose any top secrets if I say that the only critical factor for the budget of the Russian Federation, for the Russian economy, and for Putinism as such, Putin's regime as such, is price for crude oil and ability to sell that crude oil. As long as Putin is able to sell that oil at this price, basically he will be able to balance the social payouts and to keep the people in a more or less stable condition for Russia, and there will not be a lot of threats for his regime, by and large. Next slide. On next slide, we have listed, you can read our research materials on this website of Ukrainian Institute of the Future, and tomorrow we will publish the English version. But we have listed here the industries where there are really big problems because of those sanctions. Those industries include aviation, machine building, car, electronics, metallurgy, oil and gas sector. First of all, about modernization, they have actually been unable to modernize it, to upgrade it. They have postponed it for a year or two or three, and construction, because we see how the mortgage market dropped, and in the first days even up to 40% of all construction sites in the Russian Federation has been frozen. Indeed, these are big problems for the Russian Federation. Indeed, this hits very seriously a whole range of industries, but at the moment we can say that this will not be critical. It's about that 8 to 10% drop in the economy that the Russian Federation is to see this year. So this drop is indeed significant in many countries of the world. After such events, the governments would change. For many Europeans, it's unclear how you can maintain your regime when your economy when GDP comes down by 10%. But for Russia, it will not be critical, because it will hit middle class, it will hit the elites. Poor people who never makes revolutions. Revolutions are always made by the rich. And these events, at the moment, will not hit rich people to such an extent that those would be ready to make a revolution, for several reasons. One of the first and the most important reason is about the fact that currently the money there is more than sufficient money to pay the army and law enforcement, uniformed agencies. So they can keep in good conditions those who ensure stability of that regime. So based on this, based on the whole information we have, we don't have to expect any structural changes in those elites. More to it, we identify 8 groups in Russia which compete against each other, but they are all oriented towards Putin. And those sanctions have actually hit them, indeed, but at the same time, those sanctions do not force them to change the whole direction, the whole development vector, not to say they don't force them to look for any replacement for Vladimir Putin. Currently, the key problems for 2022 for their economy is reduced offerings of the goods, first of all imported goods, although they have introduced that new law. Inflation, which we estimate at 20 to 25% this year. Basically, yes, that's quite a lot, but it will not be as critical as many people think it is. More to it, with regard to the stability of the exchange rate, I'd like to remind you that there will be two exchange rates. One the official external rate, and the other one is the internal one for those people who are able to use it. And here you should also remember that now the Russian government starts to provide money to socially vulnerable parts of the population, and then create certain problems for those. Those programs will later contribute to higher inflation, but at the moment, those programs would serve as sort of some monetary safety net for those vulnerable people. And third part is unemployment. Most probably there will be no mass-scale discharges in Russian Federation. People will will be working 2-3 days a week. They will be sent for unpaid holidays, but officially we are not to see any high unemployment statistics. Many people coming for looking for jobs and so on. And I would like to repeat that anyway, they will try and provide those people with something to maintain them afloat, so to say, and on the other hand, not to provide them with any reasons to start any revolution. Next slide, please. Indeed, Russian economy starts dropping, and those sanctions will work in the next 10 years. If it continues like it is, it will be difficult for Russians. But for the next year or two, there will be no global catastrophe, no global social problems or socio-economic problems, I would say, to be for the Russian society. Yes, there will be some friction, there will be some problems, there will be some complaints, but by and large there will be no global economic hit. And nothing will hit the population that much. The real thing which would change something and allow a change of the regime is oil embargo and sharp restrictions on sales of Russian crude oil. Without that, unfortunately, we have to say that there will be no quick drop in confidence in Vladimir Putin, unfortunately. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Vadym. Thank you and your team for such rich research. I'd like to remind you that at 3 p.m. we are to have the next briefing. We'll have Colonel Alexander Matysyanek, spokesperson for the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, who will tell us about the current operational situation on the front lines. You're welcome to stay with us. Thank you.